Hello my lovelies, I am back again with another two-parter of my wrap up for the month. I think it worked out quite well last time I did it, although I did indeed forget to include my reading statistics, so I do apologise. Hopefully I'll remember to include that in the second portion of this. But again, it's looking like another really productive reading month for me. I mean, I've literally got 2 or 3 more days left as I'm filming this, and I've listened to so many audiobooks. I just know it would be quite a lot to try and fit it all into one video, so hence why I've decided to split it. So let's just jump straight in with the first book that I managed to finish in April, and that was the beginning of my audiobooks. It was just a little bit of a remainder of a book that I had read the bulk of really in the previous month, and that book is Don't Turn Out the Lights, a tribute to Alvin Swatch's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And this had a plethora of authors. Some that were known to me were R.L. Stein, Madeleine Roux, Josh Malamud et al., and it was narrated by Adam Werner and Hilary Huber. So this one I ended up giving a 5 out of 5 stars. It's basically a middle grade horror anthology curated by the master of macabre, Jonathan Maybury. I don't think I've read anything by him though, as a tribute to Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and it was such an amazing tribute. There was like 30 stories. There was quite a lot of short stories in here, some shorter than others, but honestly the collection as a whole was so solid. I loved pretty much every story, and although not necessarily can I remember every story, I thoroughly enjoyed my time hearing them and being creeped out and suspensed and horrified, you know. As I said earlier, some authors I was familiar with, but others I was definitely excited to have many more writers to explore that were new to me. I wish I had taken the time to note down every story that really stuck out to me, but one that really did impress me was Tag Your It. It was one of my favourites by far. It was a little bit inconsistent in the scare factor. Some were terrifying, some not so. So it's kind of like a mixed middle grade vibe, I would say. You'll get some favourites and you'll get some that you're like, that was fun but it wasn't very scary. But overall, as I say, absolutely love this one. 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I've actually got a reading vlog for, so I won't talk about it at all really, but that is Smashed by Junji Ito. I did a reading vlog where I read manga, graphic novels, that sort of thing, and this was one of the books that was in there. It's got 13 short stories of horror, Try Not to Be Noticed When Eating the Secret Nectar, What Are the Earthbound, and more hellish tales await the reader. So I'll let you know my thoughts in that video if you do want to know that. That one went out around the middle of the month, I would say. After that, another audiobook. This one I listened to The Ophelia Girls by Jane Henley, and it was narrated by Alex Dunmore. This one follows a mother's secret past and her daughter's present which collide. It's basically a dual timeline, the summer of 1973 and 24 years later, and dual POVs, and this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It was kind of a haunting tale. It was filled with this sensual tension and girlhood and this dark atmosphere that was just over the secrets of the mother's past, and again the secrets of what the daughter's now hiding from her family in the present. It was nostalgic but scary how easily the innocence was manipulated by a trusted adult in this tight-knit circle of friends and family. The tone gave me the Paper Palace vibes, which makes me really want to go back and try that, because I had previously tried to listen to that on audio. It might have been this year, it might have been in January, and I DNF'd it in the end. I just didn't really care for it, but because I got the tones of that in here and really enjoyed it, it makes me want to give that one another chance. I also loved how haunting the time period and season felt, which is a way I basically wouldn't describe summertime and the 70s as haunting and melancholy, and I don't know, it was a strange thing to associate with that sort of, you know, usually fun-loving groovy time, but it really worked, and it amplified the tension more so because it shouldn't feel like that. It feels wrong to feel haunting in such a generally stereotypical good period of time, you know, beautiful sunny weather. I just really commend the author for getting that visual absolutely perfect. Next up, another one that was in a reading vlog. This one, I can't remember what the reading vlog was specifically. I think it was YA books I should have read in 2014. So that one was at the very, very tail end of April, so if you want to check that out, feel free. But this book was in there, and that was Snow Like Ashes by Sarah Rush, narrated by Kate Rudd. So I will leave my thoughts for you for that video if you do want to check that out. Another book that was in the reading vlog for the graphic novels, manga, that sort of thing was, oh, it's a heavy one, The Invention of Hugo Cabaret by Brian Selznick. This one follows an orphan clockkeeper and thief. Hugo lives in the walls of a train station in Paris, and his world suddenly becomes interlocked with this really grumpy old man and a bookish girl, and changes extraordinarily from the life he was previously living. So again, vlog is ready if you'd like to check out my thoughts there. God, maybe I am going to get through so many of these. Another one that was in the reading vlog of books I should have read in 2014 was Yellow Brick War, and I listened to this one as an audio book and an ebook. It was a little bit of blended reading, and this is by Danielle Page. It's the third book in the Dorothy Must Die series, following Amy Gum and the Wicked as they continue on the quest to take down the Overlord Dorothy in the wonderful world of Oz. Swiftly moving on to another audiobook that was yet again in the vlog of books that I should have read in 2014. This one was The Queen of the Tearlin, and this is by Erica Johansson, and it was narrated by Catherine Kellgren. This is historical fiction fantasy following Kelsey at age 19, who was taken from the only home she's ever known back into the city she is told that she has now to rule and overthrow her uncle that has been trying to kill her basically at every step of the way. So once again, if you want to know my thoughts about that, check it out. You're going to get some spoilers in the case of, did she continue the series, did she not? Because yes, I did. I continued on with the sequel, and I will talk about that shortly. I do have a quote for this. I don't know if I've had a quote for anything else. I might have. But yeah, I have a quote for this, and it really touched my soul. Bookshelves weren't meant to be empty. I agree. And neither is the floor space surrounding said bookshelves or countless tables. They all need to be filled with books, I believe, personally. That was just me added on to that very poignant quote. Okay, so another audiobook I checked out was The End of Oz, and these I all found on YouTube by a fan kind of made narrator called Shayla Foster. She has all of the Wizard of Oz. She has all of the Dorothy Must Die books read on there currently, as I'm aware, and I ended up listening to a load of those on there. So again, this is the fourth installment in the Dorothy Must Die series, and this review doesn't spoil anything. I didn't mention it in my reading vlog, so I'll just talk about it quickly here. This one I gave a 3.5 stars. It is the final book in the main series, but there are lots of short stories that feature the world, so I'll be going back at some point and checking those out. But this one turned into a really fun series overall, one that I'd probably give a 3 stars in general, like for all 4 books of the main tale. I particularly like the dual narrative of this one, but some portions felt very repetitive, as you was kind of pretty much hearing the same thing but in a slightly different tone from each perspective, you know. I really enjoyed just being back in this world, and again it was such a contrast to how I felt when I initially read the very first book, Dorothy Must Die, a few years ago. It was kind of like, oh, it has potential, I feel like I could enjoy potentially more of this, but it was I think it was like a 2.5. It was something just wasn't there for me. So I am glad that I ended up continuing, albeit a little while later, like a couple of years later. And I am looking forward to the extra content via the short stories. I've got one of the short story like bound collections in the back over there somewhere that I'll get to. I think there's quite a lot, but there's like 3 or 4 volumes where it collects like 3 stories in each, or 3 or 4 stories in each. So yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, so another book is one of my really old arcs from NetGalley, and this one I talked about in that vlog for 2014, and it's The Crowns of Croswald, and it's the first book. I think it's got another name, but I'm just going to say in the Crowns of Croswald series. It's a quartet, there's 4 books to it, and this is by D.E. Knight. And just quickly what it's about, again, I've spoken all about it in the reading vlog, but this follows Ivy when she goes from maid to student. A whole new world is opened up to her. Her magic is challenged, friends are made, and lives are changed. Okay, I had one buddy read, I believe, in April, and that was for the classic Persuasion by Jane Austen. I actually listened to an audio and read. I did a bit of blended reading again. It was narrated by Greta something, I forget. Let me quickly have a little look. I don't know why I didn't write the surname. Toscachi, I think might be how you pronounce it. And this one follows Anne Elliot, who has an old flame that returns 8 years later with success, and it's up to Anne to break through petty societies and persuasions from those that believe they are doing her just, which banned all open expression of female desire, basically, to see what she really wants to do with her life. This was actually the case where I preferred the movie, so shortly after I finished this one, I did give it 2 stars, unfortunately, and so many people saying they loved it, and I was like, I'm sorry. But yeah, after I finished it, I saw the 2022 adaptation on Netflix, and I really enjoyed it much better, but I'll talk about that in my wrap-up at some point. Anyway, the first 3 chapters were very entertaining. The father was absolutely savage with how he valued his kids in terms of monetary and society gain to him. I thought it was really funny at the beginning, but after that I just got so swamped by how dense like the plot got in terms of society. And I know it was going to talk about that, I knew that, but like all the characters that were filtered in so quickly with so many different names, and sometimes they were referred to their first name, sometimes their second name, sometimes their then married name. I just couldn't keep track of who was who, and this happened around after the 5th chapter, I would say. So being overwhelmed by all the characters and names kind of put me on the back foot for the, you know, social commentary and the smaller nuances of satire in commentary. So that was unfortunate. And this is something that I feel like the movie did better, because I could see who the names were referred to, you know, so I was like, aha, okay, now I get you're referred to as this, this and this, you know, whereas I couldn't do that in my head in the book. The narrator as well, the volume was a bit wobbly, it was a bit in and out. At times it would be incredibly low, and at other times it was like super loud and ecstatic, and it was like, oh my god, this is very intense, and I don't know what volume to kind of keep it at. So my poor ears were in pain, and there were some really long pauses, but that's not the story's fault, you know, that was just the narration, unfortunately. But yes, that is my thoughts on Persuasion by Jane Austen, which unfortunately is not going to be my favourite. After that I listened to another audiobook, and that was The Invasion of the Tearlin by Erica Johansson, narrated by Davina Porter, and this was the direct sequel to The Queen of the Tearlin. And in this story we follow Kelsey as she's grown into her new role as queen, but as the Mort draw closer, she develops a mysterious connection. This one I gave it 3.5 stars. Some of it's gonna make a little bit more sense if you watch the reading vlog first, but it's not going to spoil really. It's just kind of, if you read the synopsis, you're going to know it's going to talk about those sort of bits and bobs, you know. I'm not going to spoil the actual story, but I finally looked up what era this series is supposed to be, and that's something that I had such a big issue with in the first book. I was confused at where the place was supposed to be set, and when and where, and although it settled some curiosity, a lot remained perplexing for me. One of those was the choice to have Lily's narrative woven in. It added further confusion for me and didn't really flow as well as I think the author had hoped, at least during my reading experience, because I've seen other reviews that have really enjoyed that aspect of the story. I was really disappointed in how Kelsey's character kind of dipped dramatically in this. I feel like she kind of ended up besotted a little bit with how she was looking, and this isn't the Kelsey that I kind of like enjoyed and cared about in the first book. But despite my grievances, I definitely enjoyed this a little bit more than the first book. I'm intrigued to find out how it concludes overall, although I have a feeling I will be left unsatisfied, just because I feel like this is such a strange and unusual, like with the time and the setting, series for me. Okay, and the last book I'm going to be talking about, another buddy read. I forgot that I had another buddy read. It's because it took us so long to get through. Honestly, literally ages. It was supposed to be a March buddy read, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know if Deborah, I read it with Hills of Books on Instagram, and I don't know if Deborah finished it yet. Honestly, we were taking so long, and I only just finished this like last week or so. But that is Incendiary. I can't say it. It's Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova, which is the start of a new series, a new fantasy series. As a child, Renata was used by the crown for her memory-stealing powers. She's been a part of the rebellion group of the Whispers to break down the power of the throne. So this one I ended up giving a 3 out of 5 stars overall. I like the magic and the setting, but it was a typical YA, it felt. I didn't think there was anything super new and interesting and nuanced that really captured my interest whilst reading this. I definitely enjoyed seeing how everything ricocheted into the cliffhanger at the end, and it is a very big cliffhanger, I would say. But this took me far longer to read than I feel like it should have. There was nothing really gripping me to pick it back up every time I put it back down, and I think I could have easily have slipped into a DNF had I just, you know, decided not to finish it. It would have been easy to do so, but I don't know, I had so much joy reading the Brooklyn Bruja trilogy by the same author that I really wanted to kind of see what would become of this story. So at the minute I don't really have major plans to pick up the sequel, even though the cliffhanger was massive. If it was on Audible or I could get it on my library or something like that, I'd probably most likely opt for that, but I don't think I'd end up buying the sequel unless it was like really cheap and I saw it somewhere like a charity shop or online somewhere. But yeah, most likely going to be an audio read for me whenever I do pick up the sequel. A couple of quotes. I'll choose one. Starting over is never easy, but you choose the most difficult thing anyone can do: facing your past. So that is it for today's part 1 of April's wrap up. Let me know what you've been reading, what you've been enjoying, what you hoped would be better maybe, and I shall catch you in another video soon. Bye.